Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praising President Trump's plans to rebuild Gaza, saying he's committed to Trump's revolutionary vision. The two nations forming a joint strategy to complete a completely different Gaza. Netanyahu also meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Jerusalem yesterday, announcing a joint commitment to stopping Iran. It comes as senior Iranian officials are warning that the U.S. and Israel cannot do a damn thing, quote unquote, about Tehran's nuclear ambitions. Joining me now is Wisconsin Congressman and House Armed Services Committee member Derek Van Orden. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And I know you are in Jerusalem right now. What can you tell us about next steps and the next phase of the ceasefire?
Well, I am in Jerusalem right now. I just had a fantastic meeting with the Speaker of the Knesset. We sat together for over an hour discussing these strategic issues. Really, initially, we're trying to get a much better handle on the assets they may need to recover the hostages that are here. But the primary focus was on Iran. And I'm going to be explicitly clear to the mullahs that are oppressing the Iranian people and sponsoring terror around the world. The United States of America and Israel will do anything it takes to prevent you from ever having a nuclear weapon. Now, preferably, this could be done through diplomatic channels and through sanctions, but if not, every single option is on the table with President Trump and with Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Well, I mean, what does that mean? The president recently signed an executive order to resume the maximum pressure on Iran. That's obviously going to stop them from being able to sell oil to friends like China. What else does the government or the Congress need to do in order to stop the nuclear capability?
We need to make sure that the Israeli government has as many munitions as they need, first and foremost, to continue the fight against Hamas and Hezbollah. But also, if they need to strike into Iran to prevent these people from getting nuclear weapons, we need to facilitate that. We need to make sure that we have the intelligence capability and that they have the intelligence capability to take care of any issues that we might have. So again, I want to be explicitly clear to the mullahs in Iran. Every option is on the table to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon.
What do you mean what are the other options we haven't discussed?
Well, other options would be military options. So again, I spent my entire adult life at war as a Navy SEAL, and I don't want to send our young men and women into harm's way. I certainly don't want to do that. So if we can do this by applying the maximum pressure that President Trump is speaking about, then that's what we should do. But again, we cannot trust the Iranian regime to have a nuclear weapon because they will use it. So if that means kinetic strikes into Iran, then that's what it's going to. If that's what it's going to take, then that's what we're going to do. And I have the utmost confidence that President Trump is going to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon.
Do you support Israel knocking out the nuclear capabilities? Go. They know where they are. Go in there and blow up the nuclear armament. Do you support that?
If they sense that there is a rush to getting the uranium enrichment, then that's what they're going to have to do.
Okay.
And again, I support any option that means that the mullahs in charge of Iran that are oppressing the Iranian people and sponsoring terror around the world, I support whatever it's going to take to make sure they never have a nuclear weapon. I don't think I can be any more clear than that.
Right. Well, President Trump's security team is in Saudi Arabia this morning, and they are speaking with Russian officials on how to end the war in Ukraine. Ukraine will not be part of the meeting. President Zelensky maintains that he will not take a ceasefire deal if he's not at the table. European leaders held an emergency summit on Ukraine in Paris yesterday, and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also called for a surge in defense spending. So, Congressman, I want to get your take on sort of the parameters around this Russia-Ukraine situation, because my sources tell me that the conditions on the U.S. side for Ukraine include that Ukraine must transfer 50% of all revenues from resource extraction licenses to the United States. That effectively gives Washington a stake in Kyiv's economy. They're talking about creating this investment fund for reconstruction, and that will have the power, the exclusive power, to issue and manage licenses for the resource extraction. Finally, President Trump is saying, okay, we'll support you, Ukraine, but we're not going to do it and not get anything out of it. The U.S. is going to have the right of first refusal to purchase any minerals exported before Ukraine can sell them to other countries. Your reaction to this and what the conversation is between these Russian and U.S. officials?
Well, I'm not privy to these specific negotiations, but I understand the people that are doing it, and I trust them.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're capable of defending yourself or paying for defending yourself, you should. It's that simple. So if Ukraine has the ability to self-fund their defense, then they need to. And I'd like to say something to my European counterparts. You're a decade late. So imagine what the security posture in Europe would look like if all members of NATO who promised 10 years ago they'd be contributing 2% of their GDP to defense. Germany's still not doing it. So there's the trust but verify. Now they're getting together saying that they're going to take on more of their own collective defense. We're in the verify portion of that. So having dinner, sitting around a table, saying you're going to take care of business is not taking care of business. So I look forward to working closely with our European allies because they are truly our allies, but they need to help themselves to the greatest extent that they can.
Well, we've got some headlines from the Marco Rubio meeting, and he says that they've agreed on 4 principles with the Russians in Riyadh talks. Rubio says he will appoint teams to reestablish the functionality of our missions in D.C. and Moscow. U.S. Security and U.S. National Security Advisor Michael Waltz says that there needs to be a permanent end to the Ukraine war. Waltz said that there will be talks about territory and security guarantees, and that Trump is determined to move very quickly. Secretary of State Rubio says he agreed on 4 principles with the Russians in the Riyadh talks. So we're waiting to see what those principles are, and that he will appoint teams to reestablish the functionality of our missions in D.C. and Moscow. But I think it's really interesting what the United States is saying to Ukraine, that they want 50% of all the revenues from resource extraction licenses to the United States. They are not going to give support for free. Meanwhile, the U.S. is, while it's trying to cut costs, is trying to modernize our own military. I spoke with defense firm Anduril Industries founder Palmer Luckey on Sunday Morning Futures about the U.S. buying military drones from China. Watch this.
We need to take control of our own destiny with regard to not just drones, but all of the critical high technology that our military depends on, that our law enforcement depends on. Yeah, we buy a lot of Chinese drones, but it gets a lot worse than that. Most of the computers the United States buys, even for our most critical military applications, are made in China. We've been hollowed out by globalism. We've outsourced all ability to make the things that allow us to control our destiny. We're forced into buying Chinese drones, Chinese computers, Chinese chips, Chinese sensors.
I mean, Congressman, this is absurd. You're a member of the House Armed Services Committee. How do you feel? I mean, you've done incredible service for our country, and thank you for that. But how do you feel when you learn that the U.S. military uses drones made by DJI, a Chinese Communist Party company?
I feel the same way that you do. We've got to understand, unless we control our own military industrial complex, then someone else does, by definition. And the Chinese Communist Party should not be the person in charge of our military industrial complex. They simply should not. They are not our friends. So to me, it's baffling that we are gearing up. We're getting postured to potentially be involved in a global conflagration, which we're trying to do everything to avoid. That's one of the reasons I'm here in Israel. And for us to have to depend on the people that we're going to be fighting is just no way to run a railroad. So we need to bring all these capabilities back home. We need to do it as soon as possible. Palmer Luckey, by the way, is one of the smartest guys I've ever met.
Yeah, he was great. I was so happy to have him on Sunday. He's going to be on this program soon as well. Congressman, good to see you, sir. Thank you.